entitled Mill deliberately infected OP's 1-year-old daughter with chickenpox to teach her a lesson. So OP lashed out. Now, Pa's husband demands OP apologize to his mommy, then locked their daughter inside the car, warning not to release her until OP apologizes. I can hardly type this out, because thinking about it makes me so angry. Earlier this year, my husband 31M and I decided to spend Christmas with his family for the first time since my daughter was born last September. Since they live 12 hours away, we decided to stay for a few weeks before Christmas so they could spend loads of time with Annie 13 months. We arrived early like we planned, and everything was great. I've had a few disagreements with my mother-in-law Trish 56F in the past over my parenting style. She criticized me for using disposable diapers, buying baby food from the supermarket, and not raising Annie as an organic baby, but everything seemed great. After a day or two settling in, my husband and I decided to pick up a few gifts from a mall around an hour away before the last-minute rush kicked in. My father-in-law 60M tagged along. Trish said she was happy to take care of Annie. We got back a few hours later, and Annie was down for a nap on a blanket I didn't recognize. Trish said one of her friends dropped by and gave it as an early Christmas gift. It looked pretty old-worn, but I figured one of her hippie friends was just recycling it. The next 2 weeks were fine, aside from Trish making a point to prepare meals for Annie from scratch. I mentioned this to my husband, and he said to just let her be. Annie mostly mushed the food Trish gave her with her hands through the bowls on the floor, as she's been doing at the moment. Trish said it would take her a while to get used to nutritious meals. I was getting sick of her meddling, but it was only for a few weeks, so for the sake of the holidays, I let it slide. The day after Christmas, Annie was really unsettled and wouldn't stop fidgeting and crying. I took her temperature, and she had a fever, so I kept an eye on her for the next few days, and it thankfully started to go down. This morning, she started to get a rash and blisters on her arms and legs, and I freaked out. I was packing a bag to drive to see a doctor when Trish asked where I was going. I told her Annie had a rash, and I was taking her to see a doctor. She got a weird smug smile on her face, and told me there was nothing to worry about. When I asked her what she was talking about, she said without even looking at Annie that what she had was just chickenpox. I asked her how she could possibly know that, and she casually admitted one of her friend's grandkids had chickenpox a few weeks ago. So she asked them to wipe a blanket over the child's arms, legs, and face and bring it to her house. At this point, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So I asked if that blanket was the gift Annie was sleeping on. She said it was. I lost my SHT. To be honest, I don't really remember what I said, because I was up most of the night for 2 days checking on Annie. I just unleashed on Trish, asking what the F was wrong with her. My husband and father-in-law came to try to calm things down, and Trish dug in her heels and said chickenpox was the best and most natural thing for Annie to build up her immunity. I already have a vaccination schedule in place with my pediatrician, and she was booked in to get immunized for chickenpox at 18 months. We drove to see the doctor, and he confirmed she had it. He said I'll have to cut Annie's nails short and might have to tape socks on her hands while she sleeps because kids so young can scratch until they bleed, and that will leave scars. On the drive back, my husband started making excuses for Trish, saying that she was only doing what she thought was best. I couldn't believe he was defending her, and we fought most of the way home until I told him to stop talking to me. Annie's been scratching like crazy, and I just had to tape socks over her hands. Trish tried to talk to me when we got back, and I told her to get out of my sight. We were meant to stay until Wednesday, but I just finished packing up our stuff so we can leave first thing in the morning. I'm so angry I can't even think. Whenever I hear Trish moving around in the kitchen, my heart starts beating faster, and I feel like going out there and grabbing her by the hair. I don't ever want to see her again or let my daughter see her again. What can I say to make her and my husband realize the enormity of what she's done? I don't think I can speak coherently to their faces until Annie gets better. TLDR. My mother-in-law deliberately infected my daughter with chickenpox. I'm so angry I feel like physically harming her. I need advice on what to say to make her realize what she's done. Relevant comments. When asked why her son wasn't vaccinated for chickenpox, she's up to date on her vaccination schedule. She was vaccinated for measles a month ago and booked in to get the chickenpox vaccine at 18 months old, as normal. Top comments. Fruit punching. If someone did this to my child, deliberately infecting them with a disease without discussing it with me, with the malicious intent of undermining my parenting to teach me a lesson, they'd never see my child for extended periods or unsupervised again. Deleted. Your husband better step up and act like a father and stop acting like a son. Update. Thank you to everyone for your comments, inbox messages, and advice after my original post. I read all the comments and messages, and they genuinely helped, especially the home remedies on how to stop itching. Since my first post was locked and deleted, I hope it's okay to briefly summarize here. Over the holidays, my mother-in-law Trish 56F deliberately infected my daughter Annie 1F with chickenpox by wrapping her in an infected blanket, while she was left alone with her for several hours. Trish didn't tell anyone what she had done until Annie came down with a horrible fever and rash. Annie was booked in for her chickenpox vaccination at 18 months. But Trish thought what she did was 100% normal, despite the fact it's caused Annie significant pain and distress, and now scarring to her face and arms. When I found out what she did, I was livid, and had a shouting match with her, and packed up our things to leave the very next morning. It soon came out my husband Jack didn't think Trish had done anything wrong. On to the update. I didn't think it would be possible, but things got worse. I got up first thing the next morning and started packing our stuff into the car. Once I opened it up, I kept the keys in my pocket since I was going in and out. Usually we use Jack's set and leave mine in my bag. While I was packing, he sat in the kitchen with Trish and my father-in-law 60M and chatted and had coffee like nothing was wrong. Annie was mercifully still asleep, so I just gently belted her in and closed her door when Jack came out and asked if I had everything. I said we were good to go as soon as he was. He said okay and calmly took out his key set and centrally locked the car, locking Annie in. I asked him what the hell he was doing, and he said we wouldn't be leaving until I apologized to Trish. I think I was stunned into silence because he then took the chance to rehash what he said the previous day. That Trish thought she was doing what was best, that chickenpox doesn't kill you, and that I was making a bigger deal out of this than I needed to, making Trish feel bad. Yes, making her feel bad. All the comments from my last post were swirling around in my head, and I told him he needs to stop being a son and start being a father. He screwed up his face and said he would always be Trish's son. And that was the point, that nobody should speak to his mother the way I had the day before, and I needed to apologize to clear the air. I felt like I had entered some kind of weird twilight zone where I had accidentally married a 9-year-old instead of an adult man. So I just asked him to open the car so we could leave. He repeatedly refused, then walked back inside and said he would see me in there when I was acting more reasonable. You can probably guess what happened next. I'd left my bag on the passenger seat, so he probably assumed my keys were in there. Nope. I waited 30 seconds, then just hopped into the car and drove away. My phone blew up with a million calls from him, Trish, and my father-in-law. Eventually my mom and dad and my sister Jess, who I'm super close with, called as well. I'd briefly texted Jess about what was happening the day before, but she was stunned to get the full blow-by-blow. By the time I was on the open road, I asked her to phone Jack and tell him he could walk home for all I care. Once she heard my side of the story, and not Jack's, which was apparently that I had gone crazy, frightened Trish, snatched Annie, and sped away. She calmed way down. Mom, Dad, and Jess offered to start driving and meet me halfway, so I could switch with one of them and wouldn't have to drive the full 12 hours by myself in one day. I was so grateful to see them that I pretty much broke down in a truck stop parking lot, while I blubbered that I loved them. They all took turns driving while I had a rest. It was super reassuring to talk it over and hear that Trish and Jack are the unreasonable ones. Once we got back, I stayed at my parents' overnight, and they said I could stay as long as I needed. The next few days were fairly tense. I was up most of the night making sure Annie didn't scratch, but she did anyway, somehow. And it seemed like she just cried and cried and cried until she was exhausted. She has 5 scars on her face, and a few others on her arms from scratching. I know appearances shouldn't matter, but I'm so angry her skin is marked for life, now over some stupid bullshit. This whole thing is just something I never expected to happen. I answered one of Jack's calls only to have him start a rant that he didn't recognize this person I had become, so I hung up on him. He was due to come back for the start of the work year, which I wasn't looking forward to, but I figured we could make it work as long as Trish was 12 hours away. Then at like 11 p.m. one night, I got a very short and formal text from my father-in-law via Jack's phone, saying Trish had come down with shingles and was in the emergency room, that Jack was staying there to care for her, and that he would work from their house remotely once the year started back up. Jack's been there for the past few weeks tending to Mama's every whim. I'm sure she's put on an Oscar-worthy performance of having one foot in the grave, and according to Google, it should be any day now that her painful, crusty pustules go gently into that sweet night. A few weeks ago, I was honestly so tired and overwhelmed, and in disbelief that I didn't know what to do. Now that I'm back at home with people who actually care about me, I think I'm starting to realize how lucky I am to see the weird relationship with his mommy this early on. The fact that he cares more about Trish than his own daughter speaks volumes. When he eventually comes back, I think we'll have to have a serious talk about our future together. TLDR. My mother-in-law infects my 1-year-old with chickenpox on purpose. Husband supports his mommy. He tries to force me to apologize to her by locking our daughter in the car, but I peace out with a spare set of keys. Husband has barely spoken to me in the weeks since. Mother-in-law came down with shingles, so he's staying with her to nurse her back to health. I don't think any amount of TLC can do the same for our relationship, now that I've seen the real him. Phew. Top comments. Tenapsto. He locked your daughter in the car, holy SHT. And assumed you wouldn't be able to get her out. I mean, that was why he locked her in, to threaten you. Holy SHT. Good on you for dipping out of there after that. Whatever happens with your marriage moving forward, you seem to have your parenting priorities straight. Good luck, and I hope Annie feels better soon. Bugs doing things. Yeah, this. He locked a sick baby in the car. Kudos to OP for handling that with a cool head, because I would have lost my SHT. Demonix. That is effing terrifying behavior out of him. That poor baby is going to grow up with that as a father. Skullbearer. You only get shingles if you've had chickenpox. The new vaccine prevents it. Rather ironic. I'd get divorce papers served before Mummy Dearest decides your daughter should become a breatharian or join Scientology. Second story. My wife is upset. I'm using the hall pass she gave me after I caught her cheating 5 years ago to cheat with my married friend. My wife 35F and I 35M have been married for 10 years. We have 2 children 9F, 7M. 5 years ago, I found out that my wife had an affair. I felt crushed and numb because I loved my wife a lot. Her affair partner told me about it when my wife called it off. The affair lasted 1 month, and my wife had called it off because she felt really guilty about it. When I confronted my wife about it, she was very remorseful and didn't deny anything. She said she'd do anything, follow any reconciliation steps I asked, and just begged to not break up our family. I asked her why she cheated, and she gave no excuses, and she just said it was for the thrill. My first reaction was to divorce, but after sitting on it for a week, I decided to just stick it out for our family, and because I still loved my wife. My wife was very thankful, and she even told me I had a hall pass I could use whenever I wanted. Over the next year or so, my wife followed the reconciliation steps, which included therapy, getting sober, quitting her job, and a bunch of other things. I had forgiven my wife, but I could never forget it. I would occasionally just replay in my mind my wife cheating on me, and that always hurt a lot. Fast forward to today, and my family is doing great. However, I have struck up a friendship with Melissa 32F, whom I met at a bookstore. We had common interests in books for existentialism, metaphysics, and similar books. I don't know how, but when we met, we just clicked. We initially met every week at the bookstore to just discuss books and life. But we started talking more about our personal lives, and we then started going on coffee dates and brunches. One more thing we had in common was that Melissa too was married to her husband, who had cheated on her many years ago. It's been almost a year since I met her, and Melissa has made it upfront that she has very strong feelings for me, and that she's never had these feelings for anyone else ever in her life. I too have a lot of feelings for her, but I feel guilty about it, so I haven't told her about them yet. I haven't crossed any physical boundaries, and I don't intend to. We only hug and hold hands. But I do want to explore more of an emotional connection to her, because I've never felt like this ever. I remember that my wife gave me a hall pass 5 years ago when she cheated on me. Would I be the to use that hall pass to explore the emotional connection I have with Melissa? Comments. Heart according 5D241. The fact Melissa is cheating on her husband doesn't make her better than your wife. Mrs._Surge Defiance. It makes her worse than the wife. It's been going on for a year, and she's admitted feelings not breaking it off. Why did Melissa not divorce the husband before sharing her feelings? All the adults in this story are L segment. I'd argue that the wife is no longer an as she's done serious work on herself. But surely OP and his affair partner are yes. Dragonfruit 5747. Especially because husband doesn't want to explore only the physical, but the emotional. That's really IMO. He got a physical hall pass, not an emotional one. And if he's wanting to explore an emotional relationship like that, he needs to divorce first and foremost. Froggercat. OP is actually cheating on his wife, and has been for a year. He's having an emotional affair. Honestly. A whole affair. They're holding hands and stuff. I can't think of any situation where it would be okay for a married man to intimately hold hands with another married woman. This situation is full of selfish people. Dog Poundma. Dude, you may not be having a physical affair in your eyes with Melissa, but you are already cheating on your wife through an emotional affair. I think you are cheating by holding hands and hugging her, because you aren't doing that as friends, but as intimate contact. It's obvious you haven't forgiven your wife at this point. The kindest thing is divorce, and let you both live your own lives. SLZTH_lover. A hall pass is for a one-night stand with someone you're attracted to. But that's it. A hall pass is not to deepen an emotional connection you have with someone by adding SX into the mix. I would just tell your wife you want a divorce, because chances are your wife will ask you for one when you tell her about Melissa. She's definitely going to find out that this is someone you're already in love with. Just be honest and say that you never really forget the affair, and that you want a divorce. Because chances are, if you do use your hall pass with Melissa, you'll probably want to end things with your wife, since you and Melissa already have feelings for each other. She doesn't seem like someone you want to just use for SX and never see again. You know, like how hall passes usually work. And honestly, it's clear to see that you never really got over your wife's affair. or you wouldn't be holding on to the idea of being able to cash in a hall pass 5 years later. Not that you or anyone needs to get over an affair by any means. I just mean that you didn't truly forgive her, or you wouldn't feel the need to do the same to her. Even if she said you could, because deep down, I'm sure she didn't really mean that. No one is truly okay with giving their partner a pass to sleep with whoever they want. Numbers than 09874431. Also, it's important to note that the affair with Melissa has already happened. They meet up every week, go on dates, talk, and flirt with each other. And they have started a relationship. Just because he hasn't put P in her V doesn't mean this isn't an affair. And he's been cheating on his wife with Melissa for over a year. I also wonder if OP's wife even knows about Melissa. He probably just meets up with a friend, but completely lies about her name and her gender. Judgment. YTA. Update. 1 day later. Thank you everyone for the advice. I have decided not to use the hall pass, as I don't really feel too great about it. And it wouldn't be fair to my wife. I want to clarify what I meant by using the hall pass. I had no intentions of proceeding with any sexual activity, but instead deepening my emotional connection with Melissa. And it may have at worst included kissing. She tried to kiss me once, but I rejected it because I felt guilty about it. I texted Melissa and let her know. And while she was disappointed, she asked if we could still remain friends like we are now. And I told her sure, and she was very happy about it. I do like hanging out with Melissa a lot and talking about life. I also get those flutters and excited energy, and I like that a lot. Comments. Lazy Instruction 19688. You can't remain friends like you are now. Wow. Impressive _basis 603. Remaining friends like they are now is emotional cheating and crossing so many lines already. All this time and energy invested in Melissa isn't being invested in his family, his marriage, and his wife. Her 1-month thing that she has done the work to fix doesn't justify a lifetime of this. Wow. This is so sad. 374852. You have two, and only two choices here that have integrity. Both you and Melissa get divorced, and then be together. Cut all ties with Melissa forever. Anything else, and you are going to hurt yourself and everyone you care about. Third story. The saga of a fed-up OP who broke up with her man-child boyfriend because of his laziness. My boyfriend and I planned a trip for the end of the summer months ago. Last night, we were still trying to decide how we'd get to the airport when my mom told me that she could take us before work. I told my boyfriend, who lives 30 minutes from my house, to be at my house no later than 6 a.m. for my mother to drive us to the airport at 6:15. He promised that he would be there around 5:45. This morning, he was nowhere to be seen or heard from until around 6:20. He told me that his phone fell and he didn't hear it. By then, my mom had to leave and take just me, or she'd be late to work. I told him that he should drive to the airport or get an Uber. His mom decides that she will drive him an hour to the airport since he was too late for my mom to take us. He gets to the airport a little after me, and I check in our bags. We get to the bag drop, and he realizes he does not have his ID. His wallet is at his house, which is about an hour from the airport. I tell him that I'm going to continue to Tsa and go to the gate. His mom is going back to get his wallet, which will obviously take a while. I tell him that I'm getting on the flight regardless, and that if he misses it, then it's a result of his own mishaps. He then begins to ask me what to do if he misses it. I tell him that he's an adult and should figure out a way to make it to our destination by contacting customer service. I planned everything for the trip, down to the flights and travel arrangements. I feel like at this point, I've done all I can to ensure a successful and smooth trip, and I don't feel as if it's my responsibility to do damage control for him if he misses the flight. There is no refund for the Airbnb that we split the price for if we do not go. AITA for continuing without him. Relevant comments. Commenter. Is he like this in other aspects of life? Honestly, it sounds exhausting. If so, some time alone will help you gain some perspective. Enjoy your trip, alone or otherwise. OP. He's often late, which is why I told him an earlier time specifically to avoid that. I called him endlessly, and he didn't wake up until way after the time we agreed upon. His mom had to go to him and wake him up. I told her that I was going to leave without him, and she said, he was up late. So was I. I already told him that I was getting exhausted of planning literally everything, and that I want him to begin to take some charge and responsibility. And this happens. Thank you. Commenter. Sounds like maybe he should go on a trip with his mom instead, since she's so willing to put up with his OP. This is a pattern that I've noticed from her repeatedly. It's definitely making me reconsider some things now. Commenter. It feels like you are mothering him since you need to keep on calling him to wake up and keep up with the itinerary for the trip. Does he always need to keep on relying on people to remind him? OP. He has overslept and been late for different things on multiple occasions. He does work hard and used to work night shifts, so I let it slide. But he did not work yesterday and took a nap during the day. For context, I didn't take a nap, did errands all day, and stayed up late for online class. Still woke up on time. Get on that plane. I'm going to board. When we were checking our bags, he asked me how to put the bag tag on. At that point I was over it and already decided I'm taking this vacation with him or not. He's actually leaving for Marine boot camp on September 3rd, which is why we planned the trip. OP clarifies. I have ADHD as well, so I understand. I'll forget where I put a hair clip that's in my hair. I tell him to set multiple alarms all the time, and he has an Apple Watch that's never charged. To another commenter, I have ADHD, so I completely understand. The issue with that is that he doesn't really advocate for himself. He has struggled with mental health issues and refused to go to therapy. He has cystic acne, and only this year saw a dermatologist because I called around places in our state until I found someone that would schedule an appointment. Commenter, NTA, please update as to whether or not he made the flight. OP, he's currently asking me the gate number I already told him. I told him to download the app and gave him the confirmation number. He told me to stop making it harder for him. Commenter, did you reply? Stop making it harder for me. OP, I put my phone on airplane mode, as the pilot directed. Commenter, how do I say this gently? What are his redeeming qualities? OP, he's very kind, loving, respectful, and will provide just about anything morally or materially that I need. But considering whether that's enough now. Commenter, did he make the plane? OP, no. Coming later tonight on another. To another commenter, lol, he didn't make the flight, but he's on another one later tonight. I was also really beginning to enjoy the idea of going alone. Commenter, the best part of this story was my boyfriend, not my fiancé. Keep him if you want. But how long do you want to give him enough time to grow up? OP, lol, that's true. We have been discussing marriage for a while. I'm going to reverse that discussion later today. To another, well, we're on the trip together for 5 days. He's arriving later, and I don't want to sour the rest of the time. But once we return, I will make an important decision. Mini update, 16 hours later. He's here. I told him I don't want to talk about it tonight. Mini update 2, next day. There are no bad vibes. We had a conversation, and he agreed with my concerns. Update, 4 days later. This is long, but asked for. Skip the first body of text if you read the OG post. I think the trip, despite the mishaps and the conclusion that I'm going to come to at the end of this note, was eye-opening for me, and I'm grateful for it. I have had a track record of misjudging and misinterpreting behaviors, and I promised myself that it wouldn't happen again. So I set my boundaries early. The trip began with him oversleeping, and therefore not meeting me at my house to carpool to the airport. Not a heinous act in itself, but something that has happened multiple times on different occasions. Once he finally awoke and met me at the airport late, he discovered that he did not have his wallet. The most important thing to have when traveling. Wondering how someone could forget something so essential, I waited for him to look for it to no avail. He called his mother, blaming her for rushing him in the morning, which could have been avoided by him being a responsible adult and waking up on time and preparing his things the night before and not taking any accountability. Luckily, she came to his rescue. But not soon enough. He had to rebook his flight and arrived later that day. In the process, he was still asking me what gate number the flight was while the gate number was displayed on a screenshot that he sent me, instead of using the information that I spoon-fed to him. I organized the entire trip, down to transportation, flight, accommodations, and more. I gave him a small ball to carry, and he still dropped it. In the process of dropping that ball, he failed to take accountability for his actions. I should have known how the rest of the trip would go. During the trip, there were multiple instances that solidified the feelings that were already looming. Outbursts of anger that were followed by childlike behavior and excuses. When confronted, there were only excuses and a lack of accountability. All followed by, but I'm trying so hard, and what am I doing wrong, despite the issue being directly explained. He lost his debit card, and despite my efforts in tracing his steps, calling businesses we visited, and everything, he stormed off ahead of me in range, leaving me behind, walking alone on the street. When I explained why that bothered me and was unacceptable, here came more excuses and rambling about how he didn't mean for it to happen but still did it. While walking to different restaurants, he cussed at men who'd even look at me, stare them down and almost cause a scene. He misplaced his wallet before dinner and acted in the same rageful manner, cussing, slamming things, throwing items around instead of calmly looking for his wallet. I sat there in disbelief, as this behavior had not been something I had seen before. I told him that this was unattractive and demonstrated a lack of control and emotional maturity. More excuses. There are probably more examples that I could use, but they're fleeing my mind. It's the night before departure. I'm in tears. It started at the beach. We decided to take a night swim. All was well, until he lost his ring in the ocean. Luckily, I was right next to him, so I was able to quickly use my hands and grab it. He got out to put it in the sand smart, right? Once we were done, He got upset that I sent his mom a video of him dancing. I walked away because I didn't want to hear it. He then called me back to tell me that he lost his ring in the sand. We look for the ring by we. I mean me on my hands and knees and him walking around with a flashlight. I finally find it. We begin to walk back to the room. I say, "Can I say something serious? I am beginning to feel like your mother sometimes, keeping track of your things and helping you do damage control." He responds with a law, how I didn't have to help him, how I don't acknowledge everything he's been doing like calling Ubers and paying for things, how I'm not like his mom, and how he didn't ask me to do anything. In anger, I tell him to F you and walk away. Yes, I know this is unkind, and I did apologize for my behavior later. I walk to the room alone. He begs me to talk when he gets there, and I don't want to. I shower and tell him one thing. This trip has really made me reconsider whether I want to be in the relationship. He goes berserk, begging me please to talk to him, saying that I don't acknowledge all the good he's doing, on and on. I tell him that I don't wish to have the conversation, don't wish to be touched, and want to be left alone. Here, I also apologize for my rude words without making any excuses. He tells me I'm always rude prior to dating. I did use harsh words when he showed up to my house unexpectedly and demonstrated other signs of emotional immaturity and ignored my wishes. He begins to try to hug me. I tell him to get off of me. He continues to touch me as I try to lay down in the bed, trying to hug and hold my hand. Here, I break down in tears. I run to the bathroom and begin to sob. I come out, as he's continually crying and begging me to talk to him. He begins to raise his voice and make a scene. I run to grab the pull-out bed from the closet to sleep on. He blocks me and pushes the bed, telling me I don't need it. I get increasingly aggravated because I'm being blocked and tell him to move out of my way and leave me alone. He doesn't, and he protests by sitting on the pull-out bed. I rip the comforter off of the actual bed and make a bed on the floor. He takes the blanket and pillows from under me, saying he won't let me sleep on the floor. He continues to yell in my ear for me to get up, that he loves me, and put everything behind us while he keeps pulling the pillow that I reclaimed. He has finally left me alone on the floor, leaving for the airport in 3 hours. Relevant comments. OP clarifies. I was thinking about changing my flight, honestly. I am still trying to figure out the logistics of a breakup, like how and when that could happen. After OP checks on other flights, the flight we have is the earliest of the day. There are others, but no confirmed seats, only standby. Commenter. That's only going to escalate in future arguments. Get home safe, please, and never see this man again. OP. It's concerning because the type of rage that was ignited in me is the type that has only come out with past exes. Being cornered and my personal space violated is something I just cannot do at all. I will say that I did try to push him out of the way, maybe I shouldn't have, and raised my voice, because I was afraid that his yelling would get us kicked out. Our reservation has a quiet hours policy. Get the hell out of where you are staying. I was thinking about this. The airline is under my name. I already know that I can't really trust him with following the closing procedures, so I'm worried about incurring a fee if he leaves something incomplete. Also, if I get up now, I know he will try to prevent me from leaving. We will still be on the same flight in the case that he does get there on time. He is still awake now, and the Uber comes in an hour. Commenter. You had every right to express your anger and frustration. Women are raised from girlhood to be nice, get along, and keep the peace. The time for that is over. It's now F this SHT time. Stop being nice. Be blunt. Be rude if you have to. You need to get him the hell away from you, and you need to never believe his sniveling. I'm trying bullshit again. OP. I told him F you earlier, when I told him that I felt like I was his mom, and he said, "You didn't have to help me look for the ring. I just asked for help." He said I was rude, and that he would never speak to me like that, and that his friends tell him to leave me because of how rude I always am to him. He also called me rude because I left the room and had the key, and he had to get someone else to let him in. I admit that I have cussed him out prior to dating because of his emotional instability, him messaging me incessantly and me saying, "Leave me the F alone," or things along the lines of, "You need to get therapy and leave me alone." I just could not take one more lame excuse for a concern of mine. Commenter. If you feel unsafe, record a future conversation and send it to his mom. OP. I just thought of this. Hours later. Although I do feel like it will not change anything. When he walked away from me the other day, I told her, and she told me to just be happy with him and be in love and work things out. She makes excuses for him constantly. Commenter. When I read your first post, I was concerned. He sounded like a teenage gamer. But during the holiday, he was very aggressive. Time to get out. Just block him on everything. Why I talked about talking to his mom was because she has enabled his behavior for his entire life. She knows what he's like. OP. Yeah. There was an instance recently when we went to a soccer game where he was aggressive. He had drinks, and some guy was bumping into him. I was sober and believed it wasn't intentional. I witnessed the entire thing. but he swore the guy was bumping him on purpose. It was a crowded game, and we were exiting. Everyone was touching someone. He began to heavily body check the guy back with extreme force. He went to the bathroom, and the guy came up to me and told me that my boyfriend is going to meet the wrong person one day. So embarrassing. I should have audio taped. I feel stupid now. However, I feel like she would definitely make an excuse for him nonetheless. Commenter. Why did you start dating someone who couldn't be respectful even before you were dating? OP, he wasn't like this before. The aggression is something I haven't witnessed. Commenter. I meant the showing up unexpectedly and ignoring your wishes. What got you past the red flags and into this? I'm not trying to be mean. Just understand. OP. I guess the apologies and giving the benefit of the doubt that so many people were upset that I didn't give him in my initial post. I do like to give a first and even second chance. I'm not perfect and don't expect my partners to be. He apologized for the previous behavior and made certain strides in areas, but obviously not the ones that mattered the most. Commenter. Serious question. Is he an alcoholic? He dated one, and on a mini vacation he acted just like this. A petulant child. Or is he just weaponizing immaturity? OP. In the past, he has used alcohol to self-medicate and deal with emotions. On one instance, his mom had to drive to his Apple location and found him drunk, asleep in a car outside a friend's house, when he promised her he'd be home soon. I'm not sure if the frequency or amount of his drinking would warrant a formal diagnosis of alcoholism, but both of his parents had issues with alcohol during his entire childhood. His mom says that he always gets like that when he drinks as well. We don't drink together often as a couple, but when we do, this has never happened before. We've just gone to clubs and had fun. Mini update, a few hours later. I'm at the airport now. When I left, he was asleep. He hasn't messaged me or read my texts, and his location isn't moving, so I'm assuming he's still asleep. Boarding in 10 minutes. Several hours later. I left for the airport alone. When I left, he was asleep. When I boarded the plane, he texted me, saying that I should have woken him up so that he didn't miss the flight. He said that I should have at least woken him up, because apparently his phone was on silent. One relevant comment. He actually overslept because I left while he was sleeping to get to the airport. He missed the flight. I sent him a text explaining everything, and did let him know to not come to my house, or I will call the police. Another few hours later. Thank you. He is currently texting my mom long paragraphs trying to explain his behavior. I told her to ignore him. OP clarifies that she broke up with him. I did it via text,